Apparently all I ever review on my channel is cheap Chinese trash, and I'm actually out right now reviewing more Chinese trash. The last few months I have noticed some comments from people saying all you ever do is review cheap Chinese trash. Now there are many reasons why I choose to favour cheaper Chinese brands on my channel over the more well-known brands. That being said, regular viewers know I like to do a variety of different videos on my channel. Of course I do videos of Traxxas RC cars, Armour and loads of other brands as well. I don't only focus on the Chinese brands. Yes, you will see the Chinese cars slightly more often than the bigger brands, but that's because I have built my channel from the ground up, mostly from featuring budget RC cars. And there are so many other channels out there that already prioritise the big name brands in the hobby, but the problem is not everyone can afford those big brand prices. Now I can't understand what the problem is. I like to give people the best budget options out there so that they can get into the RC hobby. You really don't have to spend a huge amount of money to actually get into the hobby these days. I think in the early days when my channel was a lot smaller, of course maybe the cheaper Chinese cars were slightly more accepted. Now my channel's starting to grow a bit larger. Maybe people are starting to think I should be featuring the larger brands more. But to be honest, there are so many channels already doing that. At the moment, I need to stick to what people enjoy on my channel, and that is the slightly cheaper end of the hobby. Other channels out there are also facing exactly the same issue when it comes to people leaving comments about cheap Chinese trash. Like I said earlier, throughout the year I do like to throw in the slightly higher end RC car as well, just to make sure there's a decent variety of videos on my channel. I've always said I do want my channel to appeal to everybody, not just one group of people in particular. I know a lot of you guys say just ignore the haters, you're doing great work, keep it up, and I really appreciate that. But sometimes I think it is also important to actually give my side of the story. And at least after doing this video, whenever I get hateful comments, I can just send them a link to this, which is way easier than writing out a lengthy reply. So why do I favour the more budget and affordable brands here on my channel compared to the more expensive brands? Well, it's quite simple really, you get way more for your money. I've already done a video about big brands versus cheaper brands. I do go into a lot more detail on that video, so that's definitely worth checking out. But it's quite simple really. I think you get way more for your money compared to the bigger brands. I have nothing against the bigger brands, it all comes down to budget. We have to remember people have different budgets when they're getting into the RC hobby. You know, some people may only have $100 to spend, some people may have $1,000 to spend, so a lot of the time it really depends on the budget. Now cheap RC car reviews is pretty much how I've built my channel over the years. People seem to really enjoy the cheaper end of the hobby. I know people who even own something like an X-Max, but they still get lots of enjoyment out of something small like a Hyper Go. Like I said earlier, it really depends on budget. Just because one person can afford an MT10 for example, the next person may not be able to. The RC hobby is something anyone can enjoy on pretty much every budget level. So that's why I like to review the slightly more affordable stuff here on my channel, because I think it gives people much more of an opportunity to get into the hobby. I can confirm I have nothing against the bigger brands, and a lot of you know that I'm a massive Armour and Traxxas fanboy. I do think they need to work slightly harder on giving us better affordable options. Yes, we've seen the Mini Max for example, that's turning out to be slightly controversial I'm noticing, especially when it costs £280 for us here in the UK, and you can get similar performance for much less money when you look at some of the cheaper Chinese cars. The Armour Grom range is also another really good example. For the money you don't get a lot of performance. Again, compared to something from a more affordable brand, a lot of those have brushless systems, they're much quicker out the box. Yeah, the parts availability thing is always going to be a slight issue for some people, depending on where you live, but 9 times out of 10 you will get much more for your money going for something slightly more affordable from one of the Chinese brands. I just think when it comes to the slightly more affordable end of the market, the bigger brands need to give us slightly more performance to make them more appealing over the cheaper Chinese cars. Someone left a comment recently saying the big brands will not care about the cheaper cars that are being released. I'm pretty sure they employ people who do market research, and I can almost guarantee they're fully aware of a lot of these cheaper Chinese cars that are being released, and they would much rather you buy their stuff And again, I'm pretty sure people would if you were getting more performance for your money. I just think it's something they need to work on. Now, I've got a fact for you. Did you know that 99.9% of RC cars are all made in China? So when people say all you ever review is Chinese trash, surely that means that's every single RC car I've ever featured on my channel. What people seem to forget is you're paying for the brand. Everything is pretty much made in China. The next thing we need to talk about is, are these cheaper, affordable brands really bad for the hobby? Believe it or not, but lots of people would say that they're actually bad for the hobby. Of course, there's also a huge amount of people who say they're good for the hobby. I'm actually siding with that group of people. I do think these affordable budget cars are excellent for the hobby, and for one reason, they get people into it. And usually once people have a go, they'll realise quite quickly that it's actually a very enjoyable hobby, and then they'll jump online and have a look for the next best thing. And a lot of the time it will be something bigger and better from a well-known brand. This is why I can't understand why there's so many people against these cars, because they're perfect to get people into the hobby. And of course, we don't want our hobby to die out, which is why this is really important. This is the perfect time to drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing your opinions on topics like this. So definitely drop a comment down below and let me know if you think cars like this are either good for the hobby or bad for the hobby. So let's talk about one of the biggest issues with a lot of these cheaper cars, and that is parts availability. I think that's the main reason why so many people are put off by these cars, because sometimes you have to wait 2 weeks or more for parts to arrive from China. Things are getting better. For example, for us in the UK, we've got local parts support for MJX and Rolalo cars. You can pretty much jump online and buy parts for those vehicles with next day delivery. I know it's not like that across the world and people still have trouble getting parts for certain cars, but I have heard people also have trouble getting parts for some of the bigger brands as well. I think it really depends on your location and where you are. If you live near a hobby store, then of course going for something from a big name brand would be slightly better, because you will have local parts support. But I know there's loads of people who don't have local parts support or hobby stores nearby, so the waiting time for parts can be very similar. I do understand that there's nothing worse than breaking an RC car and having to wait 2 weeks just to get it back out and use it. And I do think all of this is one of the biggest disadvantages when you're looking at some of the cheaper, more affordable cars. So what's the plan going into 2025? Am I going to stop reviewing cheap Chinese trash? Well, actually a lot of these cars aren't cheap Chinese trash at all. Most of them are really good. Okay, some cars that I have featured on my channel have actually been trash, but a lot of the cars I've featured from some of the more well-known brands like MJX, Rolalo, High Boxing, all of those tend to be pretty good. Anything I come across which is really bad, I always tell you guys anyway. So yes, I won't be stopping the affordable RC car reviews. That is how I've built my channel. For the time being, that's how I'm going to continue my channel. So 2025 is going to be very similar to 2024. You're going to be seeing lots more budget RC car reviews. I'm trying so hard not to say the word cheap, because I know that word offends people. People consider stuff that's cheap to be low quality. A lot of the time that's not the case, but I know people do prefer it when I use the word affordable. Of course, throughout the year you will see the slightly higher end RC car thrown in as well, but things will pretty much be exactly the same. So this is a video I wanted to do just to clear up some of the comments that I've been left recently, and I really hope this video's cleared up a few of the reasons I do what I do. So we're going to leave the video there today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you make of all of this. I'm always interested to hear your opinions. Like I said earlier in the video, I'm not the only channel that's facing comments like this. Lots of channels are facing exactly the same thing, and I think the people leaving these comments are just a bit offended by how good some of these affordable cars really are. Cheers for watching, see you on the next one, take care.